Like Naomi said, I'm Hannah. I'm from IRISBOND. I'm from the partner training and support area in our group. So I just came here to share a little bit about how to get started with our eye tracking device. And we're really going to focus mostly on the iPad side and how to use our eye tracker Hiru with the iPad. Keep in mind that iPad's not the only place that you can use the Hiru eye tracker. It actually is also available with Windows. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that in detail a little bit later. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of who we are at IRISBOND. We are an eye tracking company that we've been around for a little over 10 years now, and we're based in Spain. So we do have our roots here in Spain, and we have a lot of users and a lot of experience working here in Spain and in Latin American countries. But we have also grown and, of course, are also working in many other countries around the world, including the United States. And our company is really focused on making technology that is, made here by our team. We are the eye gaze manufacturer, so we make the camera, and we also make accompanying software that goes with the camera. So we're really focused on making our technology here and making sure that we take a lot of ownership over it. And we have the people that we're making it for in mind as we're making it. So we do focus a lot on making sure that we're working closely with the people that are using our technology. So if you have any questions or information or feedback about our technology, we are very happy to hear it. Last thing about IRISBOND is that we consider ourselves to be a very open company. We really want to be able to reach as many people as possible by combining our technology with as many options as possible. So for that reason, we've made the Hiru camera, which we'll look at in a little bit more detail in a moment. We've made the Hiru camera to be multi-platform. So what that means is that it's compatible not only with just the iPad, which is what we're going to look at today, but also with Windows devices. So you could have the choice to decide whether you want to take a Hiru camera that's working with Windows or with iPad. And the same goes for other, software or hardware, casing, things like that. So we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Before that, as an introduction to IRISBOND, I just wanted to show you this quick video that is featuring Gemma, one of our users here in Spain.
Open the blinds. Alexa, what do I have today?
You have the awards ceremony.
Great. Play some music.
I am a dreamer, I am the best. I am so cute, strong, messy, and brave. I am a smile, a little bit shy. I am free.
And the award for social action goes to Dina Carlson.
Oh my god, there are so many people here. It's wild.
I am fun, I am free, I am friendly, I am none, so I am free. I am.
So in that video, you saw Gemma using our camera, Hiru, which looks like this. She was actually using it on the iPad and in Windows at different points in the video because she's one of our users that's really been using it with both. So it's a great example of how you can really take the very same eye tracker and connect it to either item, either tablet, and just start working. So since we're going to be focusing on the iPad side today, I just wanted to point out that our camera is not only multi-platform, but it also has the Made for iPad or MFI certification from Apple. So what that means is that we've gone through this process with Apple to make sure that our eye tracker is up to their standards to be considered an accessory for the iPad. And so what's great about that is that now that we have that certification, it really is kind of like a safety certification to show that even when Apple puts out lots of different updates and is putting out all of these new accessibility features that we're seeing them put out, that with this eye tracker, we're going to be able to take advantage of those as long as we have that certification, that Made for iPad certification. So it's a really great kind of stamp of approval coming from Apple, and it allows us to really take advantage of the revolution that Apple is putting out with eye gaze accessibility in their Apple platform. So the reason I keep talking about the revolution of eye accessibility, and I put that in the title of our spotlight here, is that when we are using the iPad, it's really great because what we're doing is we're using a tool from Apple that's called Assistive Touch. And the great thing about this tool is that it's really making all of the different apps within the iPad accessible for eye gaze. I like to call it eye gaze friendly. As I'm talking about this, I'm just going to put this video on so you can kind of see how it looks to work in the iPad with the Hiru eye tracker. And I'm using an example of a communication app here of Proloquo. And I'm typing out a couple things like typing out my name and navigating through the iPad. But I just want you to know that even though I'm using this communication app as an example of what it looks like to navigate through the iPad, it's not the only type of app that we can use with eye gaze in the iPad. We can really access all of the apps in the iPad just with our eyes and using this assistive touch tool. And the reason I'm so excited about the revolution and the new things in iOS 17 is that they've added some really cool features that make it even easier for us to navigate through the iPad. So we'll get to those in a second, but I wanted to show you a little bit about how we are going to use the Hiru in the iPad. So really, when you're going to use the eye tracking camera in the iPad, you're going to use two different tools. So this looks a little bit different than what you might be used to in the Windows side. But basically, we're going to be using this tool here, which is on the right-hand side. This is the Hiru app, and this is made by IRISBOND. So we're going to use this app for that basic setup, things like calibration, basic settings, and then updating the Hiru camera. At IRISBOND, we make sure that we're always updating the Hiru camera to make sure that it has lots of, it has the latest like performance updates, and it's able to work with more and more different eye gaze users. So that's the Hiru app. That's our first tool that we're going to use. And the other tool that we're going to use is the Assistive Touch menu. So you've probably heard about the Assistive Touch menu if you've used Apple at all for accessibility, but the Assistive Touch menu is basically a tool that Apple created to be able to perform different actions that you would normally do with your finger, but just with one touch or with one look. So depending on the access method that you're using. So let's go into a little bit of detail on each of those pieces. So the first one I wanted to highlight here was just the Hiru app. I wanted to point out that the biggest thing that we're going to use the Hiru app for is that very first step when you start using eye tracking. So what you'll do is you'll connect to the Hiru camera, you'll open Hiru app, and you'll be able to position and calibrate yourself using the Hiru app. We have a lot of different options for positioning and calibration within the app, just to make it easier for whichever user is going to be taking advantage of it. For now, we're not going to go into too much detail about Hiru app. I just want you to know that this exists, and this is the place where you're kind of getting started with eye tracking in the iPad. And then Assistive Touch is the other tool that I mentioned before, and I wanted to go into a little bit of detail here. So basically, you can think of your Assistive Touch as sort of like a toolbar of options or toolbar of actions that you can select from with your eyes. So you can see in the picture on the right-hand side, the eye gaze user here in this situation has 8 different icons on her Assistive Touch menu, and she's looking at one of them just by using dwell. In this situation, she's looking at, I think, her home screen button. So when she looks there, what that's going to do is take her back to her iPad home screen. The nice thing about the assistive touch menu is that you can completely personalize it. So right now you're seeing on both these assistive touch menus 8 icons, but you can take it all the way down to just having 1 icon, 2 icons, or having 8 icons with different levels of menus within them. The thing that I want to mostly point out is that the assistive touch menu has some actions that are made specifically for eye gaze. Some things you'll see on here like dwell are going to be very useful for eye gaze users. This is a menu that provides options for pausing your eye gaze, which, as we know, is probably an important thing if people want to rest while using eye gaze. You can also use things like scroll up, scroll down. These are actions that normally it would be difficult to do with your eyes, moving your eyes up and down, things like that. If you put them on your assistive touch menu, you're going to be able to do those just by looking at one part of the screen and completing a dwell time, rather than trying to imitate the actions that you're doing with touch. The great thing about the assistive touch menu is that you'll always know what action you selected from the menu by the menu or the icon that's floating on the screen. So if you choose something like tap, which is inside this dwell menu, it will change shape and you'll be able to see that tap icon on the screen. If you choose something like hold and drag, you'll see that icon show up on the assistive touch menu as the representation of the menu. So you always know kind of like where you are and what you're doing. I wanted to show 2 more tools in the kind of that are all associated with assistive touch before we get into a little bit more detail. I wanted to show you the hot corners. So the hot corners are something that I kind of think of as an extension of the assistive touch menu. You saw that on the assistive touch menu, we were able to put up to 8 icons on there, but you can actually set up each corner of your iPad screen to be associated with a particular action. And all you have to do to trigger that action is look to the corner that you've associated with. So for example, in the video that we're watching here, I'll go back and tell you a little bit about it as we're watching the video. But in the video that we're watching here, my upper left-hand corner is set to toggle pause and resume dwell. So what we're going to see in the video is that this person that's using eye gaze is navigating around the iPad. But when they've opened this video, they wanted to start the video, and so they're actively tapping around the screen. But when they started the video, they wanted to stop the eye gaze so that they wouldn't accidentally click on anything. So what they've done is they've set up the upper left-hand corner to be a hot corner. So all they have to do is look into the corner and then the eye gaze will be paused. And you can see that the little icon on the assistive touch menu there is actually showing a pause symbol. So that's a little bit about how like the assistive touch menu icon and the hot corners can work together. Okay, last thing that I wanted to point out as far as like settings and personalization goes is something called shortcuts. This again is something that's from Apple completely. This is an invention that Apple put out there in their Shortcuts app. And we can really take advantage of as eye gaze people. We can take advantage of these shortcuts to make complicated actions a lot easier. So the Shortcuts app is basically an app that allows you to take a chain of actions, like let's say opening a message, typing out a message that I normally write, selecting the contact to send it to, and hitting send. I could set up in this Shortcuts app that chain of events, and then I could add that that shortcut in a few different places. As eye gaze users, we recommend adding these shortcuts in one of 2 different places. You could add the shortcuts as, for example, an item on the assistive touch menu, or you could add it as an item on your home screen. You can also make the buttons a lot bigger by using this personalization with the shortcuts. So I really definitely recommend using those things when you're using eye gaze with the iPad. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to point out as far as news or new things happening with iOS 17 is what they call the snap to item feature. This feature is exclusive to those eye tracking cameras that have that iOS, so that MFI certification that we talked about at the beginning. And it is a really great tool to make eye gaze even easier and more comfortable. This feature is basically what I'm talking about when I talk about being like eye gaze, making apps eye gaze friendly. So basically, snap to item, what it does is that instead of having a pointer or a visible cursor floating around on the screen showing you where you're looking at all times, it's actually going to highlight every clickable cell that you look at so that you can more easily click on it and focus on it. And it really makes a huge difference in how comfortable eye tracking is. And then auto hide is the other feature that they've added for eye gaze cameras in iOS 17. And that just makes the pointer invisible before you want to click on something. So the great thing about auto hide is that you can make your pointer invisible if you want to. For those users that don't want to be distracted by seeing that cursor floating around, they can turn auto hide on. And you can set up both of those things in the iPad settings with the Hiru is connected. So inside of the Hiru menu. I know I showed this one at the beginning, but as I'm describing the snap to item feature, I just think it's a little bit easier to show. So you can see that, I don't know if you can see this here. Right now, when I'm looking over this space here where I don't have any clickable buttons, you can see that my visible pointer is showing. But when I click on a cell that I want to use for communication or for clicking on one of those buttons, then the cell is actually highlighted. And this just makes for a really comfortable eye gaze experience. I don't know if you can see the difference there. I hope that it's clear. And if it's not, I can explain it a little bit. I have an iPad here, so I can show you what it looks like in a little more detail. Okay, since we already watched that video, I'll move on to our next one. Okay, so I wanted to do kind of a quick activity in this session together. And that is going to be for using the tools that we already have, that we've already seen, that Hiru app, the assistive touch, the hot corners, all of those, and think about how we could set it up for a user. So I have one more video for you, and then we'll talk about Dulce.
I am a dreamer, I am the best. I am so cute, strong, messy, and brave. I am a smile, a little bit shy. I am free. I am a girl, I am a boy. I am a writer, I am love. I am sunshine, I am fun, I am free. I am friendly, I am non-stop, I am free. I am.
Great. So in that video, you can really see how Dulce is using the eye tracker and the iPad to do a lot of different things. So she did everything from communicating inside of that communication app Predictable to researching something on Safari on the internet for school. And then she was watching YouTube videos on how to put on makeup with her friends. So she's using this eye tracking system for a lot of different activities. Because Dulce has actually been using an IRISBOND camera for a really long time, I wanted to go back in time 6 years ago when Dulce was 6 years old and beginning just with cause and effect games and symbol communication to show you a few examples of how people can start learning eye gaze on the iPad right from the beginning, because Dulce is someone who has been using eye tracking to communicate for her whole life. So I wanted to start right at the beginning. And then later we'll talk about what she's doing now and how we can set up the iPad for her in that case. So like I said, let's go back in time about 6 years and put Dulce at age 6, where she's learning some cause and effect games and symbol communication with eye tracking. And of course, the goals here are going to be communication mainly, but some access as well, and learning the access method. So the reason I wanted to kind of go back in time here is to think about how we might set up the iPad for eye gaze in order to make it work best for her. So some of the things that we looked at already were the assistive touch tool, the shortcuts, and the touch controls, and the controls for the communication partner. So I just wanted to point out how I would personalize this for Dulce with the Hiru. So if I'm using Hiru with someone just getting started with that really, really early stage games, I might not want to fill up the assistive touch menu all the way to those 8 icons. So we saw at the beginning that you can have up to 8 icons on the assistive touch menu, but for those really early stage users just getting used to selecting something from the menu or getting just started with eye tracking, you might want to just give a couple options at the beginning until and then once from there, if you want to add more or the user wants to add more themselves, they totally can. That's actually something that the communication partner can edit for the user, or the iGaze user can do that themselves in the iPad settings. It's completely accessible with iGaze if you want them to be. So yeah, we'd recommend with starting with like fewer assistive touch icons, and then starting with maybe an iPad home screen that looks something like this, having very few actions or apps available, and combining them and making them bigger with those shortcuts that I was talking about at the beginning. You can also use some tools like Snap to Item with the iGaze to make it easier to click on the different items. So I just wanted to show you a few kind of mini videos of what it would look like to use some of the early stage games with eye tracking. This is what it looks like if someone is using the Hiru with these types of kind of just cause and effect games. So you can see that as they're looking around the screen on this kind of balloon item here, you have this tap icon showing on the assistive touch menu, which is the action they're using in order to complete that game. The same with the fish game. All they have to do is look, and then the action carries out. But I wanted to show another example because hold and drag is another really important action if you wanted to use iGaze with some of these early stage games. So for example, you can see in the video that I'm showing here, the icon showing on the assistive touch menu down here on the right hand side is hold and drag. That's like when you touch the screen and pull your finger across. And so that's what you're doing in a game like this one. So there might be some games that just use tap, and others that just use hold and drag. So I'll show you this next, the same games that we saw at the beginning, but using hold and drag instead of tap. So you can see how by selecting a distinct action from the assistive touch menu with iGaze, you're able to complete all these different actions. And there's a ton of early stage games for the iPad, so it's a really great place to start with iGaze. I put a couple examples here, but there's lots more. And don't think that you're limited to only these, because you can apply these assistive touch tools to anywhere, any app in the iPad. And I know there's a lot of information on this page, but I just wanted to point out, I'm not going to go through it all right now. I just wanted to point out that we have some recommendations on where to start with these really early stage kiddos when they're just getting started. Because there's a lot of personalization that you can do in the iPad, but sometimes it's hard to know where to start. So from IRISBOND, we're providing in our knowledge base these user profiles. We have 3 different ones for getting started right from the beginning all the way up to the other extreme, which we'll see in a second. So that's kind of just like a spotlight or a photo of all of the different recommendations that we have for this type of user profile. Do you guys have any questions at this point? I know I haven't stopped yet for any questions. Okay, perfect. So I wanted to move just kind of to the other side of the spectrum and think about maybe more that access side, like ruling the whole iPad. So maybe when Dulce was just getting started working with eye gaze, she was using that really early stage stuff. But now she's kind of moved to this communication and even to that access side of things. So I wanted to just point out that all of the new tools for iOS 17 don't have to only be used in those communication apps like Predictable, like we saw in the video. They can also be used in Notes, weather, just to navigate through the whole iPad. All of those things are possible. So I wanted to use one other example, Edgar, for our last piece. So this will be talking a little bit about Edgar. I didn't put his age here, but he's 21. And he is a university student studying math and physics. And of course, his goals with eye gaze are actually more for schoolwork. Of course, he's got a lot of schoolwork and for communicating with friends, but for entertainment, communicating with friends like through messaging and things like that. But Edgar doesn't use the eye tracker for like voice communication in person because he has verbal communication. So he's kind of using it in a little bit of a different way. So because of that, I wanted to make sure we had the tools and setup to make the iPad work for him and the eye gaze work for him. So basically, you'll see things that look a little bit different on the setup for someone like Edgar with the eye gaze, because we have a lot more tools available here on the home screen. You can see that he has, his mail app, his contacts, his weather app. He's got a couple like all the apps, like the apps from Apple, like the settings app, HomeKit, all of those things. And the other goal for him is to make sure that he has access to everything that he needs. So we've made sure to recommend to have a kind of full assistive touch menu here. So you're able to have all of these different actions readily available on the first page of your assistive touch menu. And then additionally, we would definitely recommend that when you're getting set up for kind of this more independent or autonomous user profile, that someone might take advantage of the hot corners. So since you have a limit of 8 icons here, you can take advantage of those hot corners we talked about at the beginning. Lastly, for those small detailed tasks, things like typing or searching the internet, you might want to use Snap to Item in order to have the most comfortable experience with eye gaze. And then here's the snapshot of that other kind of independent user profile. I put a couple examples of here of communication and access apps you can use, but you can see that on the right-hand side, all of these apps are accessible with eye gaze. So you don't really have to limit yourself how to any certain app because really with the assistive touch tool, you're able to reach all of these places. I will say that some of the apps are more comfortable to use with eye gaze than others. So for example, let's say the weather app is really comfortable to use with snap to item, scroll, and like tap. So you can really navigate well through the weather app there. But for example, something like YouTube sometimes has some smaller buttons, but that doesn't mean that you can't access it. You saw that Dulce in the video was using YouTube to look at videos. So there's a lot of different apps that you can use. You would just need to make sure that you adapt your assistive touch menu, these 8 icons here, and the tools that you have for from Apple to make sure that they work for the apps that you're going to use. So the good thing is that we at IRISBOND, we have actually like an app guide along with those profile guides that I showed you here. We also have one for like some of the most commonly used apps because some apps require different things. Like some require scroll, whereas others require, I don't know, long press for different things. So we've made sure to kind of start adding more and more resources to our guides. And so we've included a lot of different apps in our knowledge base for to have like different recommendations for personalization there. All right. Before I go to kind of this end piece here, sharing a little bit of information about IRISBOND and IRISBOND in the US. Do you guys have any questions about anything we set up today or anything about the Hiru camera?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Where does it go on the device?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I guess I didn't show any great example of that. Let's see. Let's see if I can find a picture here from any of the things I showed you before. Let me reverse. Okay, so maybe you can see here with Dulce, and if not, hopefully you can see me in the video. I don't know if you guys can still see me pretty clearly as I'm talking, but I have the device here. So I have the iPad on top and then the camera below. And basically, there's some different hardware like casing options available in the US. I'll tell you about those in a second, but all of them are going to have the camera right underneath the iPad. And then you have different options depending again on the hardware that you select, and it will be connected by a USB connection. So the one that I have here, you can see that there's like physical cables here, but not all of them have that. Some of them are more kind of integrated into the device.
Okay.
And then yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Do you have? Do you work with Google Google Pixel?
Sorry, do we have? Are you talking about a specific app?
Do you work with Google Pixel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you could work with like the Google Excel, like the Google Sheets, I think it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could definitely use the Hiru with that. Whenever you're using like a third party app for access. So for example, if I'm using the iPad and then I want to go into my Google Drive and access my Google Excel sheets, I would recommend using the app rather than accessing it through Safari. Usually the app makes it a little more accessible. And generally with the Google apps, the snap to item works pretty well. So it'll make the experience work pretty well and be easier. However, I haven't tried Google Sheets yet, so I can try that for you and let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me fast forward back here again. I put a lot of slides on here, make it difficult for myself. All right, so I added here some information about how you can find us in the US. I should have changed this one here. Communication Works and Communication Matters is actually in the UK, but in the US, you may have seen us at ATIA here in January, but we're also usually at some of the bigger conferences in the US. Apart from that, you can of course find us on our website, and we have a contact form that you can fill out if you have any questions. So that link is available there. Maybe I can add that in the chat. I'll do that at the very end. And then we have two other options, like if you wanted to try Hiru or get more information about buying Hiru. The first one is our IRISBOND feedback community. And our feedback community is basically sorry, I think I have a quick highlight here. So our feedback community is actually kind of like a loan device program that we're able to provide a loan device to people who want to try it, as long as they are excited about giving us some feedback as well. So we basically will provide you a loan device and also a support setup call with myself or someone else on our support team. And then, yeah, we try and kind of like stay in touch and see how you're feeling about the device. And the great thing about it is that you can have some influence over what our next developments are going to look like, how we're going to improve the product. Apart from that, I know I'm going back and forth quite a lot. Apart from the feedback community, you can also, of course, get information on how to get Hiru for yourself or for your center or your school. But I just wanted to share a tiny bit about what I was talking about before, is that our Hiru, since it is compatible with different systems, is actually a component on some different devices that you might be familiar with. So we work in the US because we're based in Spain. We work in the US through different partners. So what that means is that they take our camera and they place it into their either communication device or into their access tool. So some of the partners that we work with in the US are PRC Saltillo, Forbes AAC, Control Bionics, RM Speech. A lot of those providers have put together our camera with different hardware solutions. So what that means is that if you are interested in getting a Hiru, we'll be able to give you a little bit of details about the different options that are available in the US and how you can access each of those.
Can you talk about the computer, Windows computer?
Yeah, so we don't only have iOS options. I know that's what we focused on almost exclusively today, but all of the partners that I mentioned before, or most of the partners I mentioned before, also have a Windows option. So on the Windows side, the casing that we provide from IRISBOND looks very similar. It just has a Surface Pro tablet inside. The Hiru is compatible with screens of up to 10 to 20 inches. Is our recommended screen size. And it sits kind of in that same place below the screen of the Surface Pro. And then for Windows, also we have compatibility with lots of the main AAC apps like Grid 3, Mind Express 5, Verbo is another one that is a Spanish language one. So we have complete integration with those big ones. And then we also have a computer control software that's called EasyClick, and that is made by us, by IRISBOND. So it's kind of like Hiru app in iPad and EasyClick in the Windows tablets. But yeah, you can get those all the Windows side through our partners as well. Any other questions about this last piece? I mentioned a couple of our partners here, so I just will leave that on the screen. But if anyone else wants to share anything or ask anything.
Hi, Hannah. It's Janet. How are you?
Hello.
I have some quick questions for you. I popped them in the chat, but I'm not sure if you saw them.
Okay, no, I didn't see them, sorry.
I saw that the specs for the Hiru app was now listed iOS 17. Is that simply because of the Snap 2 options that are in 17?
Yes, so we really recommend using iOS 17. You can use Hiru with iOS 16, but because it's a later version and an older version, and the Snaps item is so useful, I would really recommend starting with iOS 17. But if you have some sort of like MDM system on your school iPads or something like that, and you can't access iOS 17 yet, that doesn't mean you can't use the Hiru camera. It just means that you're not getting all of the great features that that Apple has put up.
Awesome. And my one other question. I saw that touch chat. I think I saw in a demonstration that touch chat had settings built right into the app for the Hiru. What other apps will include that?
Yeah, so there's some integrated, I guess I'll use the term integrated to talk about those apps that have the settings really built into them. Actually, the only app that has Hiru settings and calibration included in it is Predictable 6. And TouchChat in the end does not have that. But the great thing is that you're not needing any of those things because all of the settings that you have for calibration and kind of getting basically set up is housed in the Hiru app, which is our app. And then you're going to be accessing all of the other apps on the iPad using Assistive Touch, the Apple tool. With Snap to Item, you're getting the experience of an eye gaze integrated app without having that full integration, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So TouchChat right now does not have that, and they just recommend using Snap to Item.
Okay, and then last question. Is there any chance that you guys are also looking to release an Android version so that we could use this with Pixel phones? I think, Christopher, this is what you were looking at asking before.
Oh, yeah. So you're right that it is completely well, the Hiru is multi-platform right now because it is working with Windows and iPad. We don't have an integration at this time with Android, but it could be something possible with the very same camera in the future. What we would want to know is that perhaps through our feedback community or through you guys, all of you guys kind of in attendance, is understanding what would be the need for that, and if there's any apps or any like anything in Android that you would really want to use, and then we can figure out what would be the best way to move forward with a potential integration with Android. But right now it's not available with Android.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think something on my screen was kind of covering the chat, so I didn't realize there was so many questions here. So sorry about that. I can share a link to the resources that I shared here. So I'll put those in the chat in a second. I don't know if there's a way that I can share like the presentation, but basically all of the information that is in the presentation is going to be housed in our knowledge base, which I will put here in the chat. So the knowledge base is basically our kind of one-stop shop for our support resources. So I'll put that here in the chat so you can see all of these things, all of the routes that I put, like how to edit the assistive touch menu, all of that will be inside of the knowledge base. And then I saw another question with funding for Hiru for individual users and adults. So I will address that here. The best way I can answer that is that because we work through different partners across the US, is the partners usually take care of helping with funding and making sure you have all the things that you need to get into the funding system or get a device through the funded system. However, there is like one option with iPad, which is the Versa I from PRC Saltillo, which is outside of the funding system, but is at a more like it's a different setup because you'll be providing your iPad, and PRC Saltillo will provide the casing and the camera, for example. So you have some options through some of our partners through the funded system, and then the other side will be kind of the bring your own iPad style, which would be that option from PRC Saltillo, the Versa I. Okay, and then sorry about the Google Pixel phone. Sorry I didn't see the chat. Yes, the Android is not yet available, but we can analyze that option in the future. All right, so let me just put the links in the chat here, and I will. And I will add them so that you guys can see them. Okay. So any other questions as I'm doing that? Awesome. Well, you can stick around if you want to see these links, but otherwise, thank you so much for coming. I'm very happy to hear all your questions. And if you guys have any other questions that you think of later, or you want to know more, you can always fill out, like I was showing before, you can fill out the form on our website, or you can send us an email in the support area. We're at support@irisbond.com. Or you can visit our knowledge base, which has a lot of great resources in there. So I got a few links to share with you. One more coming.